the heart of sub-Saharan Africa, where commerce meets progress. Welcome to Souk News, your source for business, economy, and development insight that drive nations forward. From the vibrant streets of Lagos, Africa's fastest economic hub, Souk News takes you on a journey of discovery, analyzing and reporting the facts that lay the foundation for growth and development. We don't just report the news, we create it. Souk News is more than a channel. It is a catalyst for change, spotlighting the stories that shape economies, inspire entrepreneurs, and fuel progress. Covering business, finance, technology, energy, and many more, Souk News provides a daily deep dive into the stories that matter, interviews with industry titans, and analysis that empowers your understanding of economic landscape. Join us daily as we dissect, discuss, and deliver the most relevant and factual news on business and the economy. Souk News is your trusted guide, empowering you with the knowledge to make informed decisions.
Welcome to Market Insights, and this is a show where we discuss stock markets, commodity markets, and the currency markets. We will take a break right now. When we return, we'll be talking to our guests or strategists in these matters. Stay with us.
Got just what you need right here at Femi Wash Media. Call it the Midas touch and you wouldn't be wrong. Let us record, produce, mix and master your audio like nobody does. Reach us on our contact today for the best quality job.
My name is Dr. Rafiu Oladipo.
My name is Baba Jalal Repega.
I'm Reverend Julia Benite.
I'm Godio Didi.
My name is Professor Oluwatosin Emmanuel OLADETAN.
Souk News is on the ground, loading.
Very enlightening, very educative, and entertaining.
Thank you to Souk News.
So I'm happy that Souk TV has come into existence. I'm happy to be here in the Souk News.
I want to encourage you to subscribe to the channel and keep watching news that makes sense.
As Browning said, one's extension of one's reach should not exceed one's grasp, or what is heaven for. And I think Souk News is doing that.
Africa needs a voice of truth, and Souk News has become one of them. And get ready, get ready, get ready.
And keep watching.
Keep watching Souk News.
Keep watching Souk News. It's a place to be.
Keep watching Souk News.
We've got just what you need right here at Femi Wash Media. Call it the Midas touch and you wouldn't be wrong. Let us record, produce, mix and master your audio like nobody does. Reach us on our contact today for the best quality job. We've got just what you need right here at Femi Wash Media. Call it the Midas touch and you wouldn't be wrong. Let us record, produce, mix and master your audio like nobody does. Reach us on our contact today for the best quality job.
Welcome back. My name is Ikenna Mba. On today's show, we're discussing food inflation and how it affects us all. and I have a special guest in the studio today. Welcome him. His name is OLADETAN Oluwatosin Emmanuel. He's a business strategist, he's a corporate analyst, and a financial analyst. Welcome, OLADETAN.
Welcome. So good to have you this morning.
How are you doing?
Good. And you?
You look like you're doing good. I will start first about something to set the pace, right? Why do we have a food inflation problem?
Good. So if you look at it, currently in Nigeria, we've seen that Nigeria has tilted from being an agrarian society, in which it is structured to be, to so dependent on the crude oil. And what I mean is, if we go back to the early 60s, the early 70s, we usually had the granite pyramids of Kano. We had the cocoa malls of Ibadan, in fact, which led to the cocoa house which we had in Ibadan, and the development of the largest city in West Africa at that point in time. But should I call it the mistake of 1956, when oil was discovered in Nigeria, and everybody rushed that this is a new wealth, this is a new bride, let us embrace it. So because you got a new bride, you abandon your family members, and now it's also coming with its problems, and you don't have anything to fall back on. So Nigeria has had less development within the agricultural space, so we are suffering more or less from a deficit in putting the right infrastructure and putting the right facilities in place for you to be a net exporter of food rather than being a net importer of food.
Awesome. Well said. It takes me down to the next question. How can Nigeria achieve sustainability with food security without relying heavily on imports of food? Okay,
so let's look at the inflation index that was released by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics. That was on Friday. We observed that the headline inflation moved from 29.9% to about 31.7%, despite analysts in the market from historical models and our simulations were expecting like about maximum of 31.5. It moved up to 31.7. The month-on-month index, that is the increase in the average prices of goods and services between January and February, moved from about 2.64 to about 3.12. Now, if we look at that distribution, because we have like several baskets of goods and services. So when we do the consumer price index, we look at the basket of goods and services consists of food and several other things. We observe that food and non-alcoholic beverage constitute about 16.24% to the uptick in the inflation price. Now, what that simply means is that Nigerians are consumers of food. Now, this inflation rate is about speaking to the movement in February. That is, we're looking at February inflation rate. Here we are in April. The March inflation rate is expected to come sometime soon. But if you look at between that point in time, what really aggravated the increase in the prices of foods and commodities, we could either look at it from a demand side or a supply side. So basically we say inflation could either be a demand pull inflation or a cost push inflation. But what we've seen is that it is more of a cost push inflation. One, the farmers are scared of going back to the farms as a result of the bandits. In fact, we had in some states whereby farmers need to pay certain amount of money for them to be able to access their farmland. There's no time you are going to pick up the dailies or the weeklies and you will not see incidents of casualty as a result of kidnapping and farming. Also, if we look at the cost of energy, and the average price of diesel as of December was about 1,100, 1,200. In some places in Nigeria now, the average cost of diesel is like about 1,500, 1,600. So, one, you are no longer going to the farm. You are getting lesser produce. Two, the cost of energy is bringing it from the farm down to the market has increased sporadically. Also, the exchange rate volatility earlier, sometime in January, we saw the exchange rate within the market rate peak to like about 1,900, and so for the foods that are being imported during that point in time, they will have increased. So we saw that the foreign bag of rice moved from to about 90,000. From about 70,000 there about to about 90,000, which means that everything is quite expensive. So if you look at our non-alcoholic beverages in Nigeria, majority of them, the concentrates are not produced there in Nigeria, even down to beverage like cocoa. Despite the fact that cocoa is one of the largest exporting foods and commodities in Nigeria. In fact, there's no time cocoa is not among the top 5 goods that are exported in Nigeria. But we don't have chocolate, the final product of cocoa, which is chocolate or even cocoa powder, produced there heavily in Nigeria. We still need to import from the likes of Cote d'Ivoire or neighboring countries and Ghana, or import the raw chocolate and the finished product of chocolate from Europe, where we have majority of the merchants. So is it that Nigeria cannot really transform this produce into finished goods? Not so. We just need to put the right infrastructures in place to ensure that there is less of a supply push inflation than that is affecting the average increase in the prices of food and commodities within the country.
Now, what are those infrastructure we need to put in place to get this going?
Okay, so we've seen that the CBN came out recently and said that out of like about 10 trillion that was availed to the to farmers, like about 193 billion has gone bad. So should I say that you are not putting the right infrastructure? Should we say that there are not opportunities for these farmers to have the right facilities? I would say that is not the case, because CBN is intervening, the Bank of Industry is intervening, Nigerian Export-Import Bank, Nexim is intervening, Afrexim is also intervening, AFDB is also trying to intervene. But what is the appetite of an average youth or an average person to go into farming? Especially within this digital age where everything has gone, where most of the farmers are old, most of the farms we have in Nigeria are aging. There is no incentive for an average person to go back to farm. Now, aside from the fact that there is insecurity issues within the Middle Belt and Core North, where majority of the foods are coming from, most of these farmers do not have the right education, they do not have the right practices. They are using their historical practices of farming, harvesting, in which there have been a transition. Now we now have places where within a green environment you could grow a tree within a space of days and even get harvest through applying the right chemicals. Although I'm not in support of that, I would rather go back to the village and have my food made fresh from the farms, eating on leaves, than to be buying canteen and cafeteria foods, which are more or less. So, but we've also had some genetics, because someone like me now, I have more exposure to the cocoa industry. So we've seen that Cocoa Research Institute of Nigeria have been trying to provide seed to farmers, in which rather than taking up to 3 to 4 years for you to be able to grow your product, you could have a cocoa tree within a space of 2 years, provided you are in the right environment. Also, things like fertilizers and mechanized farming. An average farmer in Nigeria does not have the right education, does not have the right skill set that is required for you to be able to even get the best result from your farms, and does not even have the mechanized, only a few that are into mechanized farming. So all these, the population keep increasing, despite the fact that there's a little bit of reduction as a result of the casualties that we are having. People need to consume. People will surely eat every day. Even despite the fasting period, during the fasting period observed by the Muslims and the Christians, you still need to break your fast and you need to consume food. So at all points in time, food and non-alcoholic beverage will always be contributing the most to the increase in the price of the average consumer price index, which is the increase in inflation. So we just need to go back and see how you can create a right environment for people to go back to the farms. So if you look at the case in the 1970s, when we had the Operation Feed the Nation, where people were encouraged to plant, where people were encouraged to grow foods and commodities like that, we didn't have much of this problem. Even despite the civil war, Nigerians did not really suffer from a great casualty, because we had the agricultural system in place. So we still need to go back to the farms. That's one of the major things.
Interesting. You talked about something that piqued my interest. You talked about the tree growing in a year or two. You're talking genetically now. Isn't that unhealthy? Or in many cases, people find it not the right way to go.
Okay, so for a year or two, I mean, you have the right seed, you have the right fertilizer, you have the right environment, you do the right spacings on your farmland. Yeah, you could have it in a year or two. But for genetic, you could grow it within in days. Yes. So you could. So I would rather, for me, if I really want to eat good food, I would rather go to the farm, see it harvested, see it roasted, see it cooked in my calabash, than for me, or my clay pot, than for me to go buy something that is. So for example, if you harvest, let's take a classical example, you harvest natural apples that we have in Nigeria, you keep it for like probably 3 days, the apple is sour. But you have the green apples that you're seeing all around that are imported from places like South Africa and some other, you even see them on the shelves for months. What is keeping them is preservatives of chemicals, which should not be consumed in excess, because they also have their aftermath effect. So if you have the right practices, you have the right environment, you could you could grow trees that should take up to 3 to 4 years within half the period of time.
Awesome. So now, in response to inflation, what are the implications of growing certain food crops over others?
Okay, so if we are looking at inflation, basically we have some more or less like cash crops, and we have more or less like commercial crops. So cash crops are things that you need to sell that can earn you export and earn you foreign revenue. But also for the food crops, which are things that you really need to consume majorly. We know, for example, in Lagos State is partnering with the likes of Kebbi State and some other states for them to be able to have access to farm produce. We saw that Lagos State recently started with some market hubs where their foods are being sold at discounted prices, despite the fact that they do not have a farmland, or they do not have the right forest reserve for them to be able to grow these foods. So we need to partner. They need to return to the forest, and that cannot be induced from the local. The federal government needs to have a structured program for people to return back to the farmlands and go back and to farm. And simply because people, there will always be a demand for food. Over the last, Nigerians' inflation is about 31.7. It started the uptick for the 14th consecutive time since December 2022, from about 21.34 up till now. And food inflation has always been, food and non-alcoholic beverages have always been the greatest contributor to the uprise in inflation rate. So what that infers is that federal government need to create a program the same way they are bullish about the refining of crude, the exporting of crude. We also need to be bullish about returning back the groundnut pyramid of Kanos, returning back the oil palm estates of the East and all that, for people to, we need to export fine so as to earn foreign revenue, because currently crude oil alone contributes about 82% of the total trade export, and natural petroleum and natural gas contributes like about another 10%. So agriculture is not even contributing up to 2% of the total export. So we need to increase that share of agricultural export, and also need to produce enough for people to be able to consume in-house rather than importing. So an average person will say, I want to eat basmati rice, because they find that basmati rice than to eat ebonyi rice. Not because ebonyi rice is bad, but probably because it was not cultivated within the right environment. It is not as clean or not as durable to cook as the basmati rice. Can we get that same level of quality that we have in the basmati rice in Nigeria? Yes, but we need to put the right things in place for us to be able to get that done.
All right, so putting those right things in place that would increase growth of those crops. Now, how does that, in your own words, how does it address long-term, giving produce, to sustain our long-term growth of food crops, to sustain that gap that it has?
Okay, so if we look at, there are certain interventions. For now, Nigeria still needs to import food, simply because we do not have enough to meet the demand. So I am producing less than the desired consumption. So an average, I don't have the ability to have my farmlands produce for what all the over 200 million people are going to consume. So there's still a need to import. But if you look at some food crops, it takes within a space of some like 9 months up to a year for you to grow. Can you develop what can you do in the short term? In the short term, you need to find a way to strike a balance, probably create some incentives so as to reduce the cost of distribution, create some partnership to ensure that people are able to access their farmland without any risk of being threatened or any risk of losing their lives. Create a platform whereby there is good storage facilities. So if you even look at most of the vegetables like the peppers and all that are brought from the up country down to Lagos, they are usually traded in trailers in which that some of them, half of them, if not are lost. So we don't even have that. We need to create the right environment to even fix the storage system, have a very good storage system in the short term to even get the maximum out. So for example, a farm has a yield of, let's say, 1 kilogram. The final thing that has got to the final consumer that is good is not even up to 20 not even up to 20%, which is, so we first need to create the right incentives within the storage and the distribution network, and also create the right opportunities for people to go back to farmlands. People really need to go back to the farmlands because we cannot depend on the oil forever. Even the Middle East have moved away from oil and gone into tourism and creating other opportunities. We don't need to get our head stuck in that oil because in the next 20, 30 years, people might no longer even demand petrol or the produce of petrol for them to power their vehicles. We've seen green energy coming into place, alternative renewable energy coming into place. So people do not really want to burn fossil fuels again. So the only thing we can fall back on, and the only thing that will never extinct, as far as human beings are living, people will surely continue to consume food, whether you are watching your weight or you're not watching your weight. Even if you are watching your weight, you still need to consume some type of food. So you need to go back to the farms. Correct.
And also the electric vehicles also play the role of coming to take all that away. Less demand for oil and its products eventually. So now we are over 200 million people. With that population steadily growing, how do we tackle the food insecurity, keeping this fear in mind of the growth of our population? Okay, so
majorly, if we even look at the inflation of Nigeria, it is, like I said, there are two sides. There's a demand pull and there's a cost push. The only thing the central bank can do is to address the demand pull. Like probably there is a lot of money in circulation, so you increase interest rates. We saw that they increased by about 400 basis points at the last monetary policy meeting, from 18.75 to 22.75. They increased cash reserve ratio from 32.5% to about 45%, while maintaining liquidity ratio at about 30%. And that's to curtail money in circulation and also increase and create an enabling environment for people to invest money, to bring in what we call hot money, hot capital, for people to come in, foreign direct investment within the foreign portfolio investment, to come into the system. But for the cost side, nothing is being done. First thing, if I'm going to advise the government for us to even resolve these inflation issues, because I said Nigeria's inflation is more of a cost push inflation, driven by cost push than demand pull. We first need to address the issue of insecurity. We really need to address the issue of insecurity, because there is no day that I wake up and I don't see that so many people have lost their lives. Is there a way? First, let's even look at when Yar'Adua came into power and there was casualties in the Niger Delta. First thing, he had to go and dialogue with them. Yeah, I'm not saying you should compromise fully. I'm not saying that you should go and meet Gumi that is telling you that you need to meet him for you to engage the bandits, but you need to find a way to resolve this issue. If not, we are at the verge of entering into a war and we cannot allow this to continue for long. Yeah, we might see them just playing within a region before we know they penetrate into other regions and we are not able to curtail that issue. So we need to first address the insecurity. Let people have confidence of going back to the farms. Once they are able to go back to the farms, we also need to create the right environment. We need to ensure that people are able to do the farming in the right way. Things are evolving. The same way you would have commuted from here to the other side of the road 10 years back, before the introduction of Uber, is not the same way you would have commuted. Things evolve. So you don't expect the oldies to still be cultivating the farm the same way. We need to create the right environment for the youth to go back to the farms. And the only reason why they are only going to go back is they believe that, wow, I can continue to make funds from this thing over the next few years, over the next 10 years, over the next 20 years. I'm able to sell. For example, if we look at the prices of cocoa, prices of cocoa have been increasing over the roofs over the last few days. In fact, it's one of the factors that contributed to the increase in the food inflation over bread and cereals, yam and tubers, potatoes, and we also had the likes of cocoa. So there is wealth in farming. The old Western Empire was developed by farming and was developed by produce from the farms. But first thing, we need to address insecurity. Second, we need to address storage of farm produce. We also need to address distribution. Yeah, we saw this federal government say they are trying to bring about CNG rather than people, but we've not seen anything. We've not seen anything till now. We need to ensure that the rail system is functioning. If we are, rather than using lorries or trailers, if you transport through the rail system, you could, and through the right packaging, it could better be protected and having easier. Let people have access to the market. I really love what Lagos State is doing, but we hope it's going to be able to continue. And also, there are so many reserves that they've just stored grains without doing it. We saw what happened in Abuja when people were so hungry and the only thing they had to do is for them to go and break in. We also saw during the COVID where people were storing a lot of food. People just had to break in. So when hunger can push, or that can even result to a war sooner than than expected. So federal government needs to take a bullish on more or less from the fiscal policies. And what we'll see is that we should not be happy about the fact that we're seeing a reduction in prices of goods. Prices of goods and service goods, especially food crops, it's simply because people do not have money, and you don't want this thing to stay too long. So bag of rice is a little bit, we've seen a little reduction in the prices of pepper, we've seen a little reduction simply because you don't want to keep this thing for so long, even though they're going to get wasted. So people are not really paying that much for that. But whether we like it or not, until these issues are resolved, we are still likely to see an uptick. And the major uptick that we are going to be having in our inflation rate is from food. We saw that inflation rate, food inflation is about 37.92% as at February 2024. And we cannot continue to sustain, if not we're on our way, on the same highway that Venezuela passed through, that Zimbabwe also passed through.
So Abholt. Thank you so much. You talked about war, and the war on famine is close if we don't do something about it. So we'll take a break. When we return, we'll talk some more with our guests. Stay with us.
In the heart of sub-Saharan Africa, where commerce meets progress, welcome to Souk News, your source for business, economy, and development insight that drive nations forward. From the vibrant streets of Lagos, Africa's fastest economic hub, Souk News takes you on a journey of discovery, analyzing and reporting the facts that lay the foundation for growth and development. We don't just report the news, we create it. Souk News is more than a channel. It is a catalyst for change, spotlighting the stories that shape economies, inspire entrepreneurs, and fuel progress. Covering business, finance, technology, energy, and many more, Souk News provides a daily deep dive into the stories that matter, interviews with industry titans, and analysis that empowers your understanding of economic landscape. Join us daily as we dissect, discuss, and deliver the most relevant and factual news on business and the economy. Souk News is your trusted guide, empowering you with the knowledge to make informed decisions. Tafawa Balewa Square, TBS. Tafawa Balewa Square was initially used as a horsing ground called Lagos Race Course. The edifice was constructed by General Yakubu Gowon in 1972 and named after Nigeria's first Prime Minister, Sir Tafawa Balewa. Tafawa Balewa Square is located at 45/57 Mase Bangboshe Street on Lagos Island, Lagos, and referred to as TBS. TBS is a 50,000-seater capacity venue and houses the Remembrance Arcade, the 26-story Independence House, which at a time was the country's tallest building. When Lagos served as the country's seat of government, the National Assembly Complex was within the TBS. Also in the square are the National Broadcasting Commission Office, the Nigerian Hydrological Services Agency Office, shopping centers, travel agencies, restaurants, car parking lots, and a bus terminal. Tafawa Balewa Square is adorned with beautiful statues of white horses and red eagles, symbols of strength and dignity. Our historic neighbors include the King's College and the Holy Cross Cathedral. Tafawa Balewa Square hosted some of the country's memorable events, such as the Independence Day in 1960, when Nigeria gained independence from Britain, the Armed Forces Remembrance Day, which is celebrated annually on January 15. The edifice is a national cultural asset. Tafa Balewa Square. Souk Enlightenment.
Welcome back. It's still Market Insights. So we have a guest in the market, our correspondent, to give us real-time updates on the state of things currently. So, Lovina, please talk to us. Are you there? Lovina is in the market. She's about to give us feedback on the state of things currently. Lovina, are you with us? Lovina, go ahead. We're listening. We're listening. All right, so we'll talk to our guests briefly some more before we return to Lovina in the marketplace. So I wanted to ask you, Mr. OLADETAN Oluwatosin Emmanuel, you are the specialist here. As regards climate change in all these issues of food inflation, the scarcity of it and all that, what's the role of that in not having enough food and in also not being able to do what we should do to have the amount of food we require?
Okay, so climate change is not a new issue. It's something that we've seen all around. Pollution of the environment. In fact, I'm still of the notion that Nigeria has not even gone through the industrial age, where, despite the fact that
Sorry, hold that thought. Lovina is with us live, so let us get back to her. We will return. Please hold that thought. Hello, Lovina.
Them before now. So, hello, Mrs. Adeshola.
Hello. Good morning.
Okay, so I want to ask you, so how much were you selling items like Gary before this increase in the price?
Before, we do buy the bag for 18,000, the bag of Gary. So now we are buying it at the rate of 32. Now, while we are selling the paint for 27. Before, when we are buying 18, we are selling the paint for 15. So now it's 27. Even beans as at now, the last one I bought it for 138. Now it's 160. We are selling the paint for 55. And before, we do sell the paint for 2,500. Then we are buying for 55, 70. We are selling for 25. But now we are selling for 5,500. The rate of rice, we are buying the bag for 87,000. 87,000, while we are selling the paint for 8,000. Before, we are selling the paint for 4,350. But now it's too expensive. Even Nigerian rice, that they say Nigeria, we are buying the bag for 68. We are selling the paint for 6,000. Because if we do not sell it like that, we won't see our gain, our profit. Our own profit, enter we do sell the market, the profit, going back to the market, we will have the profit back to the market. So what's the excess we are selling? We do not see anything. Even people are buying, that used to buy for, they are complaining about it. And without doing that, we won't see our capital.
Okay, so what did they say is the reason for this price increase?
At least they should find something on it for us.
So what cost? Why did they say they have increased the price?
And some people who say dollar or something like that, and for beans, and we are not on that, because it's not dollar that is buying the beans or not dollar that is buying the Gary for us. At least they are the one that will know what they will do for us about it. So everything will come down. At least if the market come down, who will be happy for that? Because as of now, the expenses is too much. So that's why they should find something for us to do about it.
Okay, thank you for that, Mrs. Adeshola. So we've heard from a trader right here at Obada Market. She has told us that she sells her items at quite high prices for a bag of rice, a bag of beans, and a bag of Gary, going from 6,000 to 7,000 and 5,000 also. So these are our price food items for grains at Obada Market. So back to you at the studio.
Thank you, Lovina. Thank you so much for the real-time updates from the markets. So, Mr. OLADETAN, you heard, prices are going from Gary from 138 to 160. Rice is going from 4K to 8K, double, and in most instances, triple. And there's something that keeps going on, like actually the market woman said, that is blamed on the dollar. What has the dollar got to do with price of food in the market?
Okay, so basically, like we said, if you even look at it, basically the inflation that we are exposed to is far above the figures that is being reported, and we call that the basing effect. Now, the basing effect simply means that I'm comparing the prices of goods now with the prices these prices of these same goods should have been sometime in 2010. We're still looking at whether it will move the index to about 2015, but we are still comparing basis of prices of goods and services. Now, first, the major issue as regards the food crops that are being planted in Nigeria, because Gary is gotten from cassava and it's been processed cassava. Now, in the course of, I think I spent some time in the farm because I'm still going to go back to become a farmer. I get my Gary, I get my cassava, I need to soak my cassava. I need to soak it for a while. I need to go buy probably firewood, which I can easily harvest from the farms, which is not basic, does not have anything to do with dollar. But from that my same processed cassava, I need to send my child to school. I need to buy other things because I need to. So when I get to the market and they told me that, oh, prices of these things have increased, why did it increase? It's dollar. So indirectly, my own price too must increase by what? The dollar effect, because majority of the things that are being consumed by the average Nigerians are being imported, like the food, the clothing, the utility, the clothing of people, the accessories and others are being imported. Another thing is the logistics. Remember I said the prices of diesel has increased. So even most of these trucks that are bringing them are more or less like they are not petrol mobile vans, they are more or less diesel motored vehicles. So the only reason why the market person where you are sourcing it directly from is saying that average price of dollar, or probably we look at the sacks being made in Nigeria, probably you need to import a few things. But aside from the few things that you need to import to package up or even preserve those foods, the final revenue you get from the sale of those food crops, you need to go and buy other things. Just like in the case of a trade by barter, I need to use that money to be able to get other things. But because those things have increased, I also need to find a way to also factor in that, because I don't want to be in a net loss position. I want to be in a net gain position. And the only reason why food crops are coming down a bit, remember I said that it was 90,000, it has come down to like about 87,000 for the bag of rice. It's simply because people are not placing the demand. So people are not eating as much as they should. That's why the fact of some people have to go on compulsory fasting period as a result of the fact of both in the quantity and in the quality of food they are eating. So formally, if I take like about 8,500 naira, I could have a comfortable meal. But now for me to even eat that same size of meal, I need to either double the amount. Would they say is as a result of dollar? No, but majorly, remember there's also less access to the farms. If there's less access to the farms as a result of insecurity issue, that's also likely to affect the cost. So it's not like dollar directly affects the things that are coming from the farms, but the packaging and the farmers and those that are in the distribution lines, what they are going to spend the money they've earned is being impacted by dollar. So I am selling goods and I need to use that goods to pay for my child's school fees, and school fees has increased. In one way or the other, I need to still pay for that same child's school fees because I cannot go and steal or do something else. I need to increase it, so I can say it's as a result of the dollar effect.
Ripple effect, actually.
Ripple effect, yeah.
So now, based on that ripple effect, could it be that because it starts with the imports, because we're importing a lot, which we have tied to this food inflation, we're importing a lot, which is getting to affect these prices. Could it be because of that?
So for the imported foods, we clearly know that is a dollar. So for example, the concentrates that are being imported, the imported foods that are being imported, we know that one is clearly as a result of the price. And simply, if we even look at it from an accounting point of view, I bought these goods, let's say a year ago, when the price was still low. Now prices of the exchange rate has already moved. I'll be making large profit? Not necessarily. The only reason why I need to adjust that price is so that by the time I go back to the market, I'm not at a worse off position. So you might see initial high profit for a short period of time, but are going to be coming back with losses. So for wheat, for example, for the price for bread is majorly made from wheat and wheat and flour and all that. They are being imported. So remember, you cannot just import the flour, wheat flour what you are going to use to process flour for just 1 week. You are going to import for things over 6 months, over a year. But by the time you are going back to take positions, or you're looking at the prices, movement in those prices, you don't want to be at a worse of effect. Companies want to be at a nil effect, or even still make a little bit of profit. We saw that majority of the losses that were recorded by businesses within year 2023 that just ended were majorly manufacturing businesses. We had Nestle that has always been making profit run into a loss simply because they were still increasing their prices. As they are increasing the prices, you're also reducing the quality and the quantity of the beverage or the final product you are selling. If you taste your Coca-Cola now and the Coca-Cola you used to drink 20 years back then, they will tell you Coke is still Coke, but my brother, I'm sorry, Coke is different from Coke. So things have changed, so they are affecting the quality and also in one way or the other affecting the quantity if they cannot increase the price. Because in a perfect competitive market, if you're selling yours for 100 naira, another person is selling the same thing, I can still enjoy a bit even though it is less. I know it is not as premium as that. I will go for the cheaper one. And you are in business, you want to continue to sustain, you want to continue to exist into the foreseeable future. You don't want to wipe off. You need to find something to do about it by either reducing the quality or also reducing the quantity. So that's where we see for imported foods.
So reducing the quality or the quantity, but many people are doing both of them. But hold that thought. Let's go back to the markets. Hello, Lovina. You still have more for us? Lovina, can you hear me? Go ahead. Okay, while they get ready, we want to... all right, hold on. Let's hold on for a second. While they're getting ready, I have one pertinent question for you, okay? Still on the dollar matter. Dollars seem to be tied to one of the plenty issues we have. I think Lovina is back. All right, so one last pertinent question before we go to the market.
So we're still at Obada market at Obalinde, and earlier on I spoke to Mrs. Adeshola. She sells rice, beans and gari. Now I'm talking with Iya Blessing, and she sells tomatoes and pepper and what they popularly call shombo, and also tatashe. These are different types of red pepper. So Iya Blessing buys these items to come and sell at the Obada market at Obalinde. So I'm going to ask her a few questions concerning how much she sells a basket of tomatoes, how much she also sells a basket of pepper, and a basket of tatashe too. So thank you for joining me on Souk News, Iya Blessing. So how much are you selling a basket of tomatoes?
One bag is 4,000 naira.
For tomatoes?
For tomatoes.
Okay.
We used to sell 1,500, but as at now we are selling 4,000.
Yeah, what about the pepper? How much is pepper?
Pepper is 6,000 per pint.
Per pint, okay. And shombo, how much is
shombo? 4,000. Tatashe 4,000.
So why have the prices gone up? Because previously, how much were you buying a basket of tomatoes?
We used to buy a basket of tomatoes 15,000. But now we are buying 30,000, sometimes 40,000.
Well, that's very high. So that's the reason you have to increase the prices when you're selling to the consumers or customers.
Yes, so that our money will reach. From my 12 to here, by my own head, 1,000. One basket is 500.
Okay, so what's the reason for this increase in the price? Did they tell you?
Because of transport. Yes.
Okay.
From far north to here. According to them, they pay one basket of tomatoes 10,000 from there to here. Look at the money. Join with the transport, Agboro disturb them for road and everything. So everything go high. They say according to transport, the thing is high. So when we bring, we also look for how our money will come out.
Okay. Thank you very much for talking with us, Iya Blessing.
Okay, see you.
Okay, so I just recently spoke with another staple food that we need urgently. Most households consume tomatoes, pepper, and so different.
Personal opinion. Now, BRICS is coming up. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and what's the last one?
South Africa.
South Africa. They're coming up with their currency, and there's word that the currency, the BRICS coin, is going to be equivalent to $55. Now, what's the implication of that to importation for us, food insecurity, availability of food crops to tackle our food inflation?
Okay, so one issue with a common currency, if you look at the Eurozone, we have that most of the countries in Europe use the euro, but we still have the United Kingdom using the British pounds. They have different inflation rates across board. That's why the fact are using the euro. Also, we Nigeria have to defer to the BRICS central bank, or will Nigeria still maintain the independent central bank? So if we have to defer to the BRICS central banks, then in one way or the other, both our monetary and fiscal policies are going to be impacted by the decisions that are taken by them. One of the reasons why Brexit occurred was that they didn't want to play or dance to the rules, that were being displayed by the European Central Bank. So, like I said, we don't really have a monetary issue. I must commend Olayemi Cardoso for the incentive, for the right decisions he has been taking, but it's only to an extent. He can only address the demand pool. We need the fiscal policies, or those are the aims of government, to stir up and do the right things. If they don't do the right things, we are simply getting gradually to the same route that Zimbabwe is going to. So whether BRICS or no BRICS coming, we are still going to be facing the same issues. Despite we don't expect all European countries, all the people that are using the euro, to have the same level of wealth. It's just a common currency that everybody within that zone able. So let's even come back to after AFCFTA that is expected to operate within Africa. We've not really leveraged so much.
Please break that down for us.
So African free trade, free continental trade,
economy and development insight that drive nations forward. From the vibrant streets of Lagos, Africa's fastest economic hub, Souk News takes you on a journey of discovery, analyzing and reporting the facts that lay the foundation for growth and development. We don't just report the news, we create it. Souk News is more than a channel. It is a catalyst for change, spotlighting the stories that shape economies, inspire entrepreneurs, and fuel progress. Covering business, finance, technology, energy, and many more, Souk News provides a daily deep dive into the stories that matter, interviews with industry titans, and analysis that empowers your understanding of economic landscape. Join us daily as we dissect, discuss, and deliver the most relevant and factual news on business and the economy. Souk News is your trusted guide, empowering you with the knowledge to make informed decisions.
Welcome back to Market Insights. So today's rate on the parallel markets. Yesterday, actually, dollars was for 1,480 naira, official rate 1,480 naira parallel. Pounds 1,253,000 naira as regards parallel market 1,914 naira. Euro 1,068 naira as against the parallel markets for 1,064. Today is 1,400 parallel and official rates for the dollar. For pounds, 1,250 as against 1,806 in the parallel markets. And euro, lastly, 1,066 naira as against 1,549 naira. These fluctuating numbers, Mr. OLADETAN, what's your take on this?
We're still trying to achieve a stability, like the CBN. The CBN has been rolling out several interventions so as to at least achieve a stable state. Although we cannot achieve the 750 that was in the 2024 budget or in line with the medium-term fiscal expenditure framework. So basically it's as a result of demand and supply. But if you look at the volatilities in this rate, it's majorly driven by speculative demand. And that is one of the things that CBN is trying to do, is to provide a right incentive for people to invest in Naira. So we have that the OMO bills is trading around 20%, the T-bills is trading average of 20%. In fact, the bond auctions are having a lot of interest. So despite the fact that JP Morgan are estimating that the Naira should be around, Naira to dollar should be about 1,200, we might not likely get there yet if we are not able to address the speculative demand, because we are having more speculative effect than the true demand on the impact of the foreign exchange rate in Nigeria.
Thank you so much, Oladetan Emmanuel Oluwatosin. So we'll sign out now from Market Insights. Keep a date with us. Well, stay tuned to Souk News. Bye for now.